fantastic. So today we are going to be talking more about the article that we read on Tuesday, which was the one about the food social security. I'm a little bit confused actually what to call this idea because calling it just maybe food social security sounds a little bit weird to me for some reason, but it's not really a food bank. So I'm a little bit confused about, the best term to use to talk about this idea. Maybe one of you have an idea, a better idea about what to call it. But let's talk more about this idea. I'm interested to hear what you both think about it. Maybe we can talk about some of those other aspects, like we started talking about on Tuesday, how helpful this amount would actually be. Some other things related to it. But to start, what do you both remember from the article? What is the idea? What can you remember them talking about? Dun, dun, silence. Doesn't have to be a lot. Even if you just remember one little story or one little piece of information, that's enough. Unfortunately, the bot won't answer. He would probably just give us the recording and say, listen to it again. So we might have to be one of you. Who wants to go first? Manu, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Natasha. Yes, the article was about social security food, and in this article it mentioned the two trials ongoing in Belgium and France, where some NGOs, organizations, citizens, researchers, and volunteers may be also thought to implement a system to give all citizens, and in particularly poor households, a grant fund, money, monthly stipend to buy organic food, healthier food, maybe some kind of food which isn't affordable to them in ordinary times. So they wanted to implement this system, and basically one year trial when they can give a monthly stipend, a monthly allowance of about 150 euros to each citizens, and maybe only 70 euros or so to children, to give them the opportunity to buy this organic food and more sustainable food. And this system will be financed by all citizens according to their income. And so people more well-off people will grant more money, and on the other hand, poorer people will grant less money, but in general, everyone will get the same amount of money. And the goal was to give them the opportunity, as I said, to buy this more nutrient kind of food, wealthier food, instead of the industrial food system items which we ordinarily find in supermarket, because they say that this industrial food is not healthy enough. It contains maybe pesticides, which can lead to diseases for humans, and also led to antibiotic-resistant bacteria growth, and can damage also the biodiversity, the richness of species, and the number of species as well, and can be detrimental to the environment as well. So there are a lot of reasons why we should overhaul some way the way in the food industries are providing our food, and also the organic food is provided on a short supply chain, so it is more sustainable in this aspect. And the trial was a success so far, because it proved that people can afford a larger quantity of food they didn't do before, and they can another important aspect that they can choose whatever they want on the if the food respect the criteria on which the trial is based. And then there is the fact in the article mentioned in the article that food is actually provided all over the world, and there is enough food, but it is the quality of food which isn't good, and the prices also are skyrocketing, mainly to the war between Russia and Ukraine. So there was a great problem to have access of food all over the world, and this is proved by the fact that also the food bank in many countries are asking for donation of food, maybe. And in the article was mentioned that it is not a good way to cope with this deficit of food all over the world, because people can't really cook what they really like to try to eat. They have just to make do with what it is provided to them, and also the quantity of food, maybe it is not enough, and this can be a problem, especially for children, because they are undergoing a very rapid physical growth, so they need nutritious food and in enough quantity. So this is an issue that it is largely felt as a global concern. So the article ended saying that all over Europe, in particular, people are even more getting aware of this problem, and they are trying to cope in this way by this social security food system. And there is a problem. It was mentioned also in the article that maybe some people, due to the capitalism system, are very individualistic, so they don't see the real value of the goal of providing all people with this grant. But it could be beneficial also to lessen the impact on the healthcare system. So they can provide some money monthly, but they can gain a benefit by having less taxes on healthcare, on the the global healthcare system as well. So there is pros and cons, and this was what I understood more about the article. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic. It looks like you read until the end of the article too, Manu. I know that there was some points there that you mentioned that we didn't get a chance to read on Tuesday. They were towards the end of the article, so it was good to have those details too. Konstantin, is there anything that you can add to that?
Yes, I just have to add the previous review was holistic. So maybe I have nothing to add. I just would like to ask you to explain. Could you please explain what the meaning of commodity term? So I heard it in the business environment, but I have maybe no idea. It's just an item you buy in the supermarket, or what's the meaning of this word? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, was it just commodity by itself, or was there a second word there? I didn't quite catch the second word that you mentioned. Commodity, okay. So when we talk about a commodity, when we're talking, you know, as you said, in like investments, or when we're talking about finances, these kinds of things, the stock market, a lot of the times we use the term commodity to talk about like raw materials or kind of important materials, like agricultural materials that are maybe sold, especially between different countries. So you can have, you know, things like coffee or wheat, or like metals like copper, gold, these kinds of things. They talk about like the commodities market. But commodity can also be more generally thought of as like a useful or valuable thing, especially when we talk about something being like an important commodity or a useful commodity or a valuable commodity. When we start to use it in this kind of way, we're really talking about something which is very useful and valuable. So then we start talking about food as a commodity, water as a commodity. What else? Even time. Sometimes we talk about time being a commodity because it's like a useful thing that we have that's maybe a little bit, that's valuable and could be a little bit limited as well. Fossil fuels sometimes, yeah. This is the thing. When we start to use this word, it can start to cover a lot of different things because basically it's like an item or a product or a material. No, you're not a commodity. Well, no, maybe we could say you are. People are commodities. We do use this. I was going to say we don't use this term for people, but we do. When they talk about HR, for example, human resources, in companies, they can talk about the human commodities, which is about like the people as a resource in the company. So commodity, maybe that's another good synonym for it actually, resource. You can think of commodity like a resource. And that means that people can be commodities too. Although usually when we're talking about people as commodities, it's more like people as a group rather than like individual people, because otherwise it starts to sound too much like we're like buying and selling people, which is not a positive thing. We do not want to encourage slavery, okay, or human trafficking. Yeah, this is probably a good way to think about it as well, actually. Facebook and social media in general, we might be seen as like a commodity, or at least our data is. Our data is definitely a commodity. But it looks like you both get the idea here, what it's kind of talking about. So when we talk about food as a commodity, like they are here, they're talking about food being like an important resource that we have. You know, something valuable that we have that we need to manage in some way to make sure that we're using it, we're managing this resource in the best possible way. Okay. Okay. So my first question for you, I'm going to go with the obvious one. What did you both think about this idea? Do you think it would be useful to kind of receive a certain amount every month that you could use on food, but like a particular type of food, like they were talking about here in the article? Because they did mention that even though the trials at the moment are maybe with people who have lower incomes, that the idea really is to make this available for everybody in the country, right? So that everybody in the country would have access to this money to be able to use on these kinds of more healthy, maybe organic foods. So what do you both think about this idea? Is it something that you think is useful, not really useful? Konstantin?
I think nowadays it is a necessity because we have to maybe provide some change in even in food production because global warming, greenhouse effects, and it's a reality, and we have to do something and change something to save our planet. So it is maybe a little step in this direction, and as we read in article, organic food maybe more expensive, but he is much more healthy for environment, and it's more short supplement chain and more greenhouse effect and less pollution, less greenhouses effect and less pollution, and is in general it is more useful for people because people if they take non-healthy food they have problem, and it is also costs a lot of money. It's all related to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's maybe one of the interesting things that I wanted to talk about today about this as well. The fact that this idea isn't just about maybe helping people get food who need it, right? There's kind of other aspects, other areas that benefit from this idea, not just people who are maybe finding it difficult to buy food. That's only really one side of it. Manu, what did you think about this idea?
Yes, thank you. But the idea is good. I think there is nothing to say against this trial. But on the other hand, I think it can't be scalable. It can't be used all over the world. I think maybe for Europe or some places maybe where people are more lucky, more have a higher income, relatively higher income. It could be, it could work. It could help also local farmers to thrive by selling their local products to citizens and get rid of industrial food provided in supermarkets. So changing the way people eat and eat more nutritious food and also grant some money to rural households. But I don't think you can really criminalize industrial food because I think if also the poorest countries in the world, think for instance of Asian countries and in Africa, in the very poor countries, they can afford food for everyone just because of industrial food. So it is necessary industrial food to them. Otherwise, they would starve. I think also currently. I don't know. Maybe it can change. It can change something just locally, but you can't. I think nowadays say we grant social security food to very poor countries. We just need to rely on industrial food, and there are just some trends globally. The trend to go towards synthetic meat, for instance, or eating insects, just for this reason, because there isn't the possibility to feed billions of people all over the world. We have to change something, but just organic food as we think of it is not the only answer. I think we have to think of something else. Bob, thank you.
Yeah, this is true. And I mean, we've read some other articles that kind of suggest some other possible solutions to this, right? I think maybe ways of combating it, because it's a pretty big issue. Not just one thing is maybe going to solve it. So, yeah, you're right. There's probably some places that maybe this wouldn't help so much. It wouldn't really make a difference, because the problem then isn't necessarily that people don't have the money to spend on this type of food, but it could be basically that this type of food doesn't really exist either, that there's kind of a shortage of food as well. And if you've got a shortage of food in general, obviously, if you have money to spend on it, you have to spend on whatever food is available, which may not be, healthy food or, just organic fruits and vegetables, especially if it's in a region where, fruits and vegetables don't really grow because of the other conditions in the environment. Yeah, it may not necessarily be junk food either. I mean, I think we've probably got a step between like organic fruits and vegetables and junk food. And I think that's probably where most people eat, that in-between place. But there does need to be maybe some options in the middle there that people can still buy to make it. Okay, well, we've both kind of mentioned that maybe there's not so many disadvantages, and I'm going to challenge you to find some. But before we do that, let's try to make like a list maybe of like the either different people or different groups or different areas. I'm thinking the environment could maybe benefit from this kind of plan. So what are some different groups or elements that you think would benefit from this plan? Konstantin?
Excuse me, did you mean some group that feel this benefit at first, because all humanity maybe in some time will feel the benefit of this kind of approach. But now exists some group of people with a high level of poverty, and maybe they first who need to improve their food, and that's why this kind of group of people is more necessary this initiative. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you understood, because obviously the idea is that everybody would benefit in the long run, right? That it would kind of create a better situation for everyone. But I was thinking more of like specific groups of people or industries or areas that might have the, I don't know if it's the initial benefits, but would be the most benefited or maybe directly benefited by this idea. Farmers, okay. Farmers is one. And I think you both mentioned a little bit about the farmers, right? The fact that maybe they would be able to invest a little bit more in, like healthier methods. Manu?
Yes. I was thinking of the people, the group of people receiving this grant. Maybe it could be particularly beneficial people who don't really understand the benefit of eating healthier food. I think, for instance, that many children in countries, in richer countries, are experimenting obesity, yearly obesity. So maybe some people don't have this culture of eating healthier food. Also in my town in Italy, I see many households sometimes in eating junk food. I think also bringing along their little children together with them. So eating this junk food full of fat. So maybe it could be useful also to educate people to eating healthier food, because as the article also said, it is not enough just to inform people what kind of food are more beneficial to them, because you have to start at an earlier stage in your development to eat healthier food to have good results in your adulthood. Otherwise, you could develop some diseases, obesity, diabetes. So it will be very helpful in this respect, and also, as Konstantin said, to help local farmers as well, because sometimes they don't have the opportunity to send their goods to supermarkets, because in industries, food industries are much more powerful to bring their items in the supermarket, and the local farmers don't have enough power to have a say to bring the goods on the shelves in the supermarket. So it could be beneficial in this respect as well. And this is my opinion. Thank you.
Yes, great. So there's two important groups there, I guess. One about encouraging people who maybe don't eat so healthily to eat more healthily, because that's what, they can only buy healthy food with it. So they're kind of forced maybe to try some things that they wouldn't try otherwise. To kind of experiment things or to use it, because I'm pretty sure the parents would be saying, no, we're getting this money, we're going to buy this food. I'm not buying a lot of other food and just wasting this money that they're giving us all for free. Well, not for free, actually. You're probably paying for it in your taxes, but I'm sure the parents wouldn't want to waste it. But then again, also giving that farmers the opportunity to maybe get their products into local shelves, to give them a little bit more power compared to some of these like big companies. It would maybe give them a little bit of power back, a little bit more strength, I guess, to get into places like supermarkets and other stores, to be able to sell to places in their local area that maybe they don't get at the moment. Konstantin?
Yes, you are absolutely right. As we say about big companies and, for example, about situation in Ukraine. So maybe we have a powerful agriculture here. So, and very fertile land and soil to grow a lot of vegetables and fruits. So it's a big potential, but it great potential only held by the few people that we can count on the one hand, literally, because we say about great and big agricultural concern, and it is no farmer in our country because the political situation is not appropriate to develop small business. So it's about some big monopolist, and they not interested to manufacture to grow maybe some healthy vegetables, because it's more expensive and it's cheaper to grow with some special fertilizer and with harmful elements, and also earn big money on that. So it also very depends on inner situation in every each country. For example, in Belgium and in France, some farmers can and have an opportunity to grow natural food and sell it to the supermarkets, but in countries of third world, so-called third world, so they not developed enough to provide this initiative. So it's maybe a complex problem that also relates to some political constitution of country. Thank you.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors like this, a lot of decisions that are made at very high levels that can actually make it kind of more difficult for these to have these kinds of, or this kind of industry, I guess, if we're talking about the agricultural industry. Manu, did you have a question for Konstantin?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask Konstantin what he thinks about the fact that I read that Ukraine is a global reservoir of wheat, and Ukraine usually exported a great amount of wheat all over the world, especially to African countries, and now there is a blockade by the Russians, so they can't export the hundreds of boats carrying this important grain to support the the feeding so many people. So what is thought about this fact? Thank you.
I am not sure that I understand you right, but yes, it is. Ukraine is the global manufacturer of wheat and a lot of grain and also sunflower and a lot of production. But now supply chain is disrupted. So, for my opinion, is a way to resolve the problem is develop new kind of supply chain. So it's maybe not using Black Sea as before, but using some another maybe railway in the side towards Europe, and it also can be helpful to resolve this problem. But the general problem for Ukraine, as we say for now, it's for sure it is war. So if no war and it is maybe will be resolved, and also we sell our grain to the country in Africa, and there is and another also countries, and the amount of these countries is big. So it's about global famine, and it's very important to all world, not only for Ukraine. So thank you, and I hope I understand you right, and I answer to your question.
I think you answered it, Konstantin, but let's check with Manu. Manu? Yes. Yeah, and I think this is kind of a good example in a way of showing us just how connected everything is. Because I think it's one of these things that I think we know, but we don't know at the same time, or we forget, just how connected everybody is. And so the idea that a disruption in one part of the world can severely affect maybe other areas of the world as well, that aren't even close by, we kind of forget how easy that is to happen sometimes, I think. So kind of solving these kinds of issues isn't just for the good of whatever country you happen to be in. It's going to kind of affect other countries around the world as well, because they're all connected in a way. And yes, wheat would definitely be considered a commodity. Manu, you have another question. Okay, this is good. I like it. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a curiosity. I wanted to ask both of you if there is some kind of food, local food of yours that you usually don't buy because you think it is too much costly, but you would like to try to eat, and what, on the other hand, what kind of food is always present in your dish, a day by day meal, because you can't do without it. Thank you.
Oh, this is a good question, Manu. I like this question. I'm going to start getting you to prepare the questions for me. I have to think about it though. Konstantin, can you think of something? Maybe there's something that immediately comes to mind for you. I can only think of a silly example right now, which is maybe just a example of substituting one ingredient for another. It's interesting that in Brazil, limes are really cheap. Okay. And hang on, I'm going to put a picture here as well, because I know people get lemon and lime mixed up, and I'm going to talk about both of them. So, okay, limes are like this little green guy. He was the first one. So limes are really cheap, like really cheap. If I tried to convert it into dollars just to make it easier for everybody to understand, it would maybe be like 20 cents for a kilo. It's really cheap. But lemons are really expensive. Our friend here in yellow, lemons are really, really expensive. They're usually like, what would it be if I converted it to dollars? Okay, maybe in dollars it doesn't sound so expensive, but it's maybe, you know, like $8 a kilo. But if you compare like 20 cents to $8, that's a big difference in price. And for me, they're very similar, these two fruits. And I always get confused, especially because in Australia, it's the other way around. Lemon is very cheap. So in most recipes that call for something like this, you use lemon. Lime is really expensive. You probably pay like $2 for every lime. So instead of like 20 cents a kilo, you're paying $2 for each individual lime. And limes are small. So for me, this is a really good example of the fact that you can have one item which is really cheap and really abundant in one place and really easy to use, and then it's like a luxury somewhere else, or something that you probably wouldn't use so often because it's much more expensive. I think your question was a little bit more serious than that, though, Manu. But maybe it's an example of it. To be honest, I use them. I substitute one for the other, depending on where I am. There is a little bit of a difference. I think lemons are a little bit more sour than limes. For me, I think limes are a little bit sweeter. So they do have a different taste. But it's not a huge taste, for example, in most recipes. I don't know. Maybe other people would disagree with me. But for me, there is a difference. Like, they do taste different. But because mostly you're using them because of how acid they are, I think for most kinds of recipes, you can substitute one for the other and it doesn't make too much of a difference. Maybe changes the taste of it a little bit, but not so much. So that's something that came to my mind. Now I'm interested about both of you. What are the kinds of foods that you think of that are maybe really expensive in one place? Manu?
Yes, thank you. I don't know if it is absolutely very costly, but I think it isn't affordable every day because it is a bit costly. For me is fresh seafood. You know, if you want to buy fresh fish, is a bit costly. It's very healthy to eat because fish has a very healthy kind of fat to eat. So it is recommended to eat it once a week, maybe, or something like that. But you can't afford to buy it so often, at least for an average income, I think. So usually, for instance, in my case, I buy the freezed, the frozen kind of fish you can find in the supermarket if it is cheaper, for instance. And what I always want to have in my meal, in the other hand, is fresh fruit. I can't do without fresh fruit, and luckily in Italy there is a great choice of fruit, also seasonal fruit, but also fruit from export from other countries, so you can't buy it. Even though recently prices have risen. I've got a rise in price. For instance, just something that in Italy is very common in winter time. For instance, oranges. You know, this here was very expensive. Maybe the price has doubled relatively to the years before this last, and so something that you gave for granted to buy for some people wasn't affordable anymore, and also just meat from chicken meat and turkey meat prices have risen very much lately. I think due to the problem with growing it at the same cost as previously, because also energy and fuel costs have risen enormously recently. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point as well, Manu. I think in a lot of places around the world, prices just in general of a lot of food, but particularly meat, have risen significantly, and that does make it difficult to buy some of these things than it might have been in the past. Konstantin?
Yes, I just would like to add. Then we make some comparison, and if I compare, for example, with Europe price. So Ukraine, we have in Ukraine is a lot. It is it's much cheaper price for all food in general. And for example, also for alcohol and for cigarettes, and it is almost for all you can imagine. So it's much cheaper, but also incomes are much lower. And there is maybe no special, maybe some exotical fruits and also some special fish. Oceanic fish, it cost more expensive, but in general our prices before the war were more cheaper than in general in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and you made a very good point there as well. The prices might be cheaper, but the income is also lower as well, because I think sometimes this is an important point to think about when we think about the price of food too. We have to think about it relative to the income of the people who are buying that food, because let's say that let's use the example that you just did, Konstantin. Probably, like a $5 bag of chips, let's say in Italy, and a $5 pack of chips in Ukraine, if we convert them to the local currencies, it's probably going to feel a lot cheaper to buy it in Italy than it would in the Ukraine, just because maybe the difference in salaries as well. So sometimes I think when we're comparing like food prices as well, we need to think about it in relation to salary and wages and those kinds of things, because that can make something that maybe it could have the exact same price. If we kind of did the conversion, it could be the exact same price in two different places, but in one place it would be considered cheap and the other place it would be considered expensive. So that kind of comparison is really important too. And actually, that reminded me of another question I was going to ask you about it, which was about the value actually that they were talking about for this food. Because also I think that this could have an effect maybe on how useful it is. And I think in the two tests, the value was about the same, right? It was about, I think, 100 euros per person, if I remember. I know we had lots of numbers here, right? But I think they talked about like a monthly amount of about $100 per adult. Sorry, not $100, 100 euros, because it's different. So let's maybe stick with that value. How useful would 100 euros be, do you think, in a monthly food budget? How much of the food budget do you think it would actually cover? Especially if we're thinking maybe of buying more, like we're spending it on those kind of healthy foods, organic foods, those kinds of things. Konstantin?
Yes, thank you, and excuse me, please. And maybe you will be surprised, but it is half of my budget on the month. It's my monthly plan, and for example, I spend 200 euros per every month to food, to live, and to survive. And also about the 200 euros it takes for accommodation and pay some money for place to live in. So it is very cheap. Maybe it's paradise on the earth. Thank you.
Yes, like I have a feeling this 100 euros would be have a different kind of value in different places. I think if I got to change it into reais to spend in Brazil, 100 euros, wow. 100 euros would go a really, really long way. It would maybe cover all of my food for the month, maybe, if I think about it. Maybe not, but I think it would get close. Manu, I have a feeling you might give us a different different story though. Yeah, so think about, you've got this 100 euros to spend on food. How useful would that be, I guess, in like the food budget for the month? You have to think though that the conversion rate here isn't so great. I'm not sure what it is at the moment. Let me see. It is. Okay. No, it wouldn't cover everything, no. So today, for example, it would be about 550 for me in reais. So no, it probably wouldn't cover all the month. I think we spend a little bit more than that. But it would be, it would cover a lot of food. The problem is you've got to bring the euros with you, Konstantin. You need to still have your salary in euros. And this is why I say, like, I'm pretty sure if it was just 100 reais, okay, it wouldn't go so far. Not for the month anyway. But 100 euros, okay, that makes a big difference. There's a lot of typing. Would anyone like to talk instead of typing? Yeah, Konstantin, you're kind of stuck there at the moment a little bit. I don't think you have the liberty, unfortunately, to leave, but that's okay. For the future, you can make plans. Okay. Okay. Maybe one last question then about this for today. Do you think this could actually happen? Because I think we've all agreed that this sounds like a good idea, right? That it could be helpful, that it could help a lot of different things, help people become healthier, spend less on healthcare, help out farmers, encourage, more sustainable farming practices. There's definitely some big benefits there to it, right? But do you think it's realistic? Do you think that it's actually possible to provide this kind of service or this kind of idea to everyone in the country? No? Okay. Konstantin?
I just want to ask you, it is possible to make a charity if you have no money, for example. So maybe possible you have do something, and it's maybe answer is possible, but not for all people, but just for people who can allow it for their self. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a big obstacle, I think. It costs money, and the money has to come from somewhere. Manu, why did you say no?
Yes, thank you. I don't think that the most well-off, wealthier people would agree to give more than 150 euros per household to other people who can't afford buying organic food. I don't think they would agree unless it is a law obligation, something they are forced to do. But to implement this another cost to people wouldn't be something that people who can afford because have a larger income would agree to grant to other people. I don't think it is. I don't think it is viable. I don't know. It is impossible only if it is funded just by the government. So the government give it this card. Something of the like happened in Italy, for instance. Poorer families got a monthly a card which was monthly charged with some money to spend just for food. So it was a welfare policy just to help poorest people, but nothing was asked to other people to grant to finance. So if it is just the government, it is viable. Otherwise, I don't think it is possible. Thank you.
Yes, and to add to that, if it's government and they don't raise taxes to do it, because if it's government, the money still has to come from somewhere, and that money is coming from taxes. So it either means that the government isn't spending on something else, or that they've raised taxes to be able to include it. And people generally complain about both those options, about raising taxes or about taking the money away from something else. So even with the government kind of paying for it in a way, they're really just redirecting money, let's say, from somewhere else. And people can have a lot of objections about that redirection. So yeah, it does make it a little bit more complicated to do. Okay. Well, we are out of time for today, but is there anything else that either of you wanted to add before we finish? Any last thoughts or ideas? Stop the bot. Yes, thank you. I'll stop the recording. But now we'll have the recording of the article and also the discussion about it. So that's good. Anybody who wants to catch up can kind of catch up with us and maybe comment a little bit more. I'll post the link as well for the topic here. So if you feel like writing anything else about it, if you think of something else, you can do it there as well. Okay, but thank you very much and hopefully talk to you both soon. Bye.